If you can remain calm in the face of chaos from a liar in your life, you must understand this simple technique to know if they will ever stop. Seeing the entire picture will anchor you while others flounder in the liar's confusion. By mastering this, you can see clearly through any deception, while those around you fall victim to their egos. So, let me share a Buddhist legend that teaches the power of stillness amidst turmoil. In the bustling marketplace of the imperial city, a nobleman strolled among the stalls, his wealth evident in the way he carried himself. Around his neck hung a jade pendant, glittering in the sunlight, drawing the attention of both merchants and thieves alike. The marketplace was filled with noise, the haggling of buyers, the clatter of vendors setting out their wares, and the cries of children darting through the streets. Suddenly, in a blur of motion, a thief dashed out from the crowd, snatching the nobleman's pendant with a swift hand. The crowd erupted into chaos. Shouts filled the air as people began chasing the thief through the narrow lanes, their anger and panic fueling the stampede. In the midst of this frenzy stood a monk, quietly observing the unfolding scene. His robes, simple and unadorned, barely moved as the crowd surged past him. His face was serene, showing no sign of concern, as though he stood apart from the chaos surrounding him. As the mob raced after the thief, they knocked into a cart stacked high with fireworks, setting off a series of small explosions. Bright colors and sparks erupted into the sky, turning the once orderly marketplace into a battlefield of flashing lights and deafening noise. People screamed and scattered, rushing to avoid the flying embers, while others trampled over abandoned stalls in their haste. Despite the sudden explosions, the monk remained still, his gaze steady. Vendors fled, leaving behind their goods, and customers scattered in every direction. The flames from the fireworks reached a nearby food stall, setting it alight. In moments, fire began to spread, licking at the edges of the surrounding market. Yet the monk did not move. As the flames crept through the stalls, a troop of imperial guards arrived, alerted by the commotion. Seeing the panic and the rising smoke, they mistook the scene for a rebel attack. Without hesitation, they began rounding up anyone they could find, grabbing merchants and citizens alike in their frenzy to restore order. Their heavy hands fell on innocent bystanders, accusing them of causing the chaos. The monk's calm demeanor caught the attention of the guards. "You," one shouted, pointing his spear. "Are you behind this? Why do you stand so calmly while the city burns?" Before the monk could respond, a loud crack echoed through the marketplace. The ancient wooden supports of a granary, weakened by the spreading fire, gave way. Massive sacks of grain tumbled from the structure, bursting open as they hit the ground. Grain spilled across the market in a flood of golden dust, adding to the confusion. But the danger didn't stop there. The falling debris smashed into a nearby water reservoir. Water gushed out in torrents, mixing with the spilled grain, turning the ground beneath the people's feet into a slippery, treacherous mess. Vendors, guards, and fleeing citizens alike slipped and fell, struggling to keep their balance as carts overturned and debris cluttered the streets. Yet through it all, the monk stood firm, his feet planted in the ground as if rooted to the earth. Amidst the panic, the thief who had caused the initial chaos reappeared. Seeing an opportunity in the confusion, he darted between the slipping merchants and terrified citizens, grabbing whatever valuables he could reach. Rings, necklaces, coins, nothing was safe from his quick hands as he darted through the crowds. His greed grew as the chaos deepened. The guards were too busy managing the disaster to notice him, and the people were too focused on escaping the slippery streets. Emboldened, the thief saw a small girl, separated from her parents, clutching a delicate necklace in her hands. He rushed toward her, his eyes gleaming with opportunity. But just as the thief reached out to snatch the necklace, a voice broke through the noise, calm, steady, and commanding. "Why do you add to this suffering?" The thief froze, startled. It was the monk. Though the marketplace was filled with noise, the monk's voice cut through the chaos with a quiet authority. The thief turned, confused by the monk's serene expression amidst the madness. "Look around you," the monk continued, his voice soft yet unshakable. "What will you gain from taking this child's trinket when everything else is falling apart? Do you believe that wealth can protect you from the world's storms?" The thief, for the first time that day, hesitated. He looked at the chaos he had caused, the flames, the floods, the panic, and something inside him shifted. The valuable pendant he had stolen earlier now felt heavy in his pocket, its worth meaningless in the midst of the destruction unfolding around him. The monk's gaze held steady. "You seek wealth and security, but you do not realize that your actions are driven by fear, just like those who flee from this storm. True strength lies in calmness, in understanding that material possessions will not save you from the dangers of life. Look at what your greed has caused: confusion, fear, and destruction." The thief's hand, still outstretched toward the girl, trembled. He looked at her frightened eyes and for the first time saw the fear and pain his actions had brought. Slowly, he pulled his hand back and stood frozen, overwhelmed by a growing sense of shame. As the floodwaters continued to rise, the monk turned toward the thief. "There is still time to choose another path," he said. "Not all is lost. Return what you have taken and face the consequences with dignity. That is the only way to break free from the chaos." The thief, now visibly shaken, reached into his pocket and pulled out the jade pendant he had stolen. He walked over to the nobleman, who had been watching the entire scene unfold from a distance. Bowing his head, the thief handed over the pendant without a word. The nobleman, surprised by the act of surrender, took it back without hesitation. The chaos in the market began to settle. The fire was finally extinguished by the villagers working together, and the imperial guards, seeing the situation for what it truly was, stopped their arrests. The granary had collapsed, but the floodwaters were receding, and the people, though shaken, began to recover. The monk, still standing in the same spot, watched as order slowly returned. His calmness had been the eye of the storm, a quiet force that influenced those around him, without ever lifting a hand. The guards, having witnessed the thief's change of heart, approached the monk again, but with respect this time. "Why did you not run like the others?" one of them asked. "You could have been swept away in the flood or burned in the fire." The monk smiled faintly. "Running from fear only strengthens it. Standing still and facing it shows that we are not its servants. In moments of chaos, it is the calm mind that sees clearly." The thief, who had remained nearby, listened closely to the monk's words. He realized now that it wasn't the jade pendant or the coins that had driven him. It was fear. Fear of having nothing. Fear of being nothing. But now, after everything he had seen, he understood that there was a greater value in stillness, in choosing a different path. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the monk turned and began to walk away, his steps slow and deliberate. The market would rebuild, as it always did. People would return, and life would move forward. The monk, now moving through the quieting marketplace, was soon approached by the thief once more. There was no malice in the thief's eyes, only a desperate search for something more. "Wait," the thief called out, his voice uncertain. I don't understand. How could you remain so calm while the world around us was falling apart? Weren't you afraid?" The monk stopped, but didn't turn right away. He allowed the question to hang in the air for a moment, before finally speaking. "Fear is natural," he said gently, "but fear is not meant to control us. It is like the wind. It passes over us, but it should never sweep us away. When you learn to stand still and face your fear, you realize that the storm always passes, and you remain." The thief struggled with these words, his past filled with running and hiding, stealing and surviving. But something about the monk's calm, his unshakable presence, resonated deeply within him. "But what if—" the thief hesitated. "What if I've lived my whole life in fear? I don't know how to stand still like you do." The monk finally turned to face him, his eyes soft but piercing, as though he could see through every layer of the thief's soul. "The first step to calmness is not the absence of fear, but the awareness of it. You saw today how your fear led you to steal, to cause chaos. Yet, when you listened, truly listened, you found another way. That is the first sign of change." The thief looked down at his hands, still stained with the dust and grime of the marketplace. He could still feel the weight of the jade pendant he had stolen, even though it was no longer in his pocket. "How do I move forward from here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The monk smiled gently. "You begin by doing what you know is right, even when fear tells you otherwise. You've already started. The rest will come with time and patience. Like the grain that spilled into the streets today, your life may seem scattered, chaotic, and hard to clean up. But grain, once collected, nourishes, and you too can gather yourself and offer something of value." The thief stood in silence, watching the monk as he slowly walked away, his figure becoming smaller in the distance. The words echoed in his mind. For the first time, the thief didn't feel the urge to run, to hide, or to take what didn't belong to him. He felt the weight of responsibility, of choices yet to be made, and the possibility of becoming someone else, someone better. As the marketplace began to recover from the day's chaos, the thief made a decision. He stayed behind, helping the merchants gather their scattered goods, even returning some of the small items he had taken during the commotion. No one recognized him as the culprit. No one accused him of wrongdoing. They only saw a man trying to set things right. In time, the thief became a familiar face in the marketplace, not as someone to fear, but as someone who helped when needed. The monk's lesson of calmness in the face of chaos stayed with him, guiding him away from his old ways. He learned that in the stillness, in facing fear with steady resolve, there was always a way through the storm. Fear drives people to act impulsively, to make poor decisions that lead to greater chaos. But when we learn to remain calm and face our fears with clarity, we find solutions that we otherwise could not see. The monk's lesson is one we all must learn. Peace does not come from avoiding the storm, but from standing firm within it.